A German shepherd waited 8 years for his family in the same place. And then one day, a miracle happened. For nearly a decade, through snowstorms, blazing heat, and endless nights, this loyal dog refused to move from the side of an old highway. People thought it was just heartbreak, but there was something much darker hidden in that silence. When a kind stranger finally steps in, she uncovers signs that the dog isn't just grieving, he's guarding something. And the moment someone tries to take him away, buried secrets begin to surface, secrets powerful people would do anything to erase. Why did this dog never leave? What truth has he been protecting for 8 long years? And when the miracle finally comes, will it bring healing or danger? I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Type it down below. And while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across State Route Y12, where a weathered mile marker stood sentinel beside a gravel pullout. Wind whistled through the surrounding pines, carrying with it 8 years of stories about the German shepherd who had claimed this spot as his own. Banner sat perfectly still, his graying muzzle pointed toward the road, scarred paws planted firmly on the precise triangle of earth he had guarded for nearly a decade. The dog's vigil was as much a part of the landscape as the twisted guardrail and the scattered wildflowers that pushed through the rocky soil. Local drivers knew to slow down here, some even waving to the steadfast creature who neither wagged his tail nor shifted his gaze in response. Banner simply watched, waited, and guarded. The rumble of approaching trucks broke the usual quiet. 3 white county vehicles pulled into the pullout, their official markings declaring them part of the redevelopment crew. Banner's ears twitched forward, but he didn't move from his post. Men in orange safety vests climbed out, clipboards in hand. "This is the spot," one called out, checking his paperwork. "Got to clear all roadside hazards before the widening project starts." Another worker pulled something from the truck that made Maren Kittredge's heart stop. She had been walking back to the Highway House diner after her break, a habit that always took her past Banner's post. The object in the worker's hands was unmistakably a tranquilizer gun. Maren wasn't the type to draw attention to herself. 18 years of serving truckers and tourists had taught her the art of blending into the background. Her dark hair was always neatly tied back, her diner uniform clean but unremarkable. People tended to look right through her, which usually suited her just fine. But not today. "Wait!" The word burst from her before she could think better of it. Her feet carried her forward, surprising even herself as she planted herself between Banner and the man with the tranquilizer gun. "You can't do this." The crew looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. The wind whipped her apron around her legs as she stood her ground. "Ma'am, this is county business," the man with the clipboard said. "This animal's been reported as a road hazard. We've got orders." Maren's hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. "He's not a hazard. He's never bothered anyone. Ask anyone who drives this road." Behind her, Banner hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound. She could feel his presence, though, solid and unwavering as the mountains themselves. "Orders are orders," the man with the tranquilizer gun said, raising the weapon. "Step aside." Maren thought of her brother, who had trained canine units before his death. He had taught her about the intelligence in dogs' eyes, the depth of their loyalty. She saw that same loyalty in Banner every day, though she didn't understand what held him here. "No." The word came out quiet but firm. Dark clouds were gathering overhead, promising the storm the Weather Service had been warning about. The Brandring 7 from Vistiate Dottes. Wind picked up, carrying the first few drops of rain. The crew leader looked at the sky, then at his watch. "Look, we'll be back with the proper paperwork. But that dog can't stay here. Progress is coming whether you like it or not." Maren waited until the trucks pulled away before turning to Banner. His amber eyes met hers, and for the first time in all the years she'd passed him, she saw something there besides distant watchfulness. A flicker of recognition, understanding. The rain began falling in earnest. Thunder rolled across the valley as Maren hurried back to the diner. She returned minutes later with a foam container of leftover meatloaf. "Come on," she said softly, holding out a piece. "Just for tonight, until they're gone." Banner's nostrils flared at the scent of food, but he didn't move. Marin placed the meat a few feet closer to the diner, then backed away. Minutes passed. Finally, as the storm intensified, Banner stood. Every movement seemed to cost him, as though breaking his vigil physically hurt. He followed her, one careful step at a time, drawn by the trail of food she left. By the time they reached the diner's back door, they were both soaked. Marin led him to the storage room, where she had already laid out some old blankets. "Just until morning," she promised him. "Then I'll bring you back." Through the night, as she worked her shift, she kept checking on him. Banner lay quietly in the corner, but his eyes never closed. He was still awake when her shift ended at dawn. True to her word, Marin walked him back to the pullout as the sun rose. Banner immediately took up his position, shaking off the night's comfort as though it had never happened. Standing there in the grey morning light, Marin felt the weight of what she'd done settle over her. The county crew would be back, armed with paperwork and authority. By stepping between Banner and that tranquilizer dart, she had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. But watching Banner resume his faithful vigil, she knew she wouldn't have done anything differently. The wind picked up again, carrying with it the scent of rain and pine needles. Marin hugged her arms around herself, knowing that this quiet morning was just the calm before a different kind of storm. She had made herself visible, had made herself a problem for people who solved problems by removing them. Banner sat perfectly still, his attention fixed on the road as always. But as Marin turned to leave, she could have sworn she saw his ear twitch in her direction, the smallest acknowledgement of their shared secret. She walked back to the diner, her footsteps crunching on gravel, each step taking her further from the life of comfortable invisibility she had built for herself. The morning sun painted the mountains gold, but Marin couldn't shake the feeling that darker days were coming. Behind her, Banner kept his watch, guardian of whatever secret had held him there for 8 long years. And now, whether she wanted it or not, Marin had become part of that secret too. The morning rush at the Highway House diner had just ended when the bell above the door chimed. Marin looked up from wiping down the counter to see a heavy-set man in an expensive suit standing in the entrance. His presence seemed to suck all the warmth from the room. "Miss Kittredge?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Silas Penwell. I own the auto dealerships down in the valley." Marin's hand tightened on her cleaning rag. Everyone knew Penwell Motors. Their flashy billboards lined every major road for 50 miles. "What can I get you?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. Penwell settled onto a stool, adjusting his silk tie. "Coffee, black, and a moment of your time." He waited until she'd poured his cup before continuing. "I understand you had some interaction with our county crew yesterday. If you mean stopping them from shooting a harmless dog, then yes." Marin busied herself organizing sugar packets. "That harmless dog is impeding legitimate county business." His voice hardened. "The pullout is being cleared for safety reasons. We have permits, Miss Kittredge. Legal authority." "Banner's never hurt anyone," Marin said. "He just sits there." "Banner?" Penwell's eyebrows rose. "You named it?" "That's what everyone calls him. He's been there 8 years, which is 8 years too long." Penwell leaned forward. "Listen carefully. That stretch of road is being redeveloped. The old pullout will be gone within days. If you interfere again, there will be consequences. Legal ones." The bell chimed again. State Trooper Ronan Vale walked in, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. Penwell straightened, his threatening demeanor sliding behind a businessman's smile. "Morning, Trooper," he said smoothly. "Just having a chat with Miss Kittredge here about that nuisance dog." Ronan's weathered face gave nothing away. "The German Shepherd at mile marker 42? Saw him with you during the storm last night, Marin." Marin nodded, grateful for the interruption. He needed shelter from the weather. "Interesting thing," Ronan said, accepting the coffee she poured him. "That dog sat at perfect attention when I drove past. Responded to basic commands too, just like a trained canine unit." Penwell's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. "Are you suggesting—" "Just making an observation," Ronan cut in mildly. "Strays don't usually show that kind of discipline." Marin thought of her brother again, of the countless hours he'd spent training police dogs. Banner did have that same alertness. that focused intelligence. Well, Penwell stood, leaving his coffee mostly untouched. Remember what I said, Miss Kittredge? Some things aren't worth fighting for. He dropped a $5 bill on the counter and strode out. Ronan watched him go. Everything okay here, Marin? She told him about the county crew, the tranquilizer gun, and her impulsive intervention. They said they're coming back with paperwork. They probably will. Ronan's face was thoughtful. That whole stretch is slated for widening. Penwell's got a new dealership going in just down the road. Marin's stomach clenched. They said the pullout will be bulldozed within days. Likely so. He studied her. You seem awful worried about that dog. Marin struggled to put her feeling into words. He's not there by accident. 8 years, same spot every day. He's waiting for something. Or someone. Ronan nodded slowly. Tell you what, I'll look into any accidents or incidents reported near that mile marker. Maybe there's a reason he picked that spot. Throughout her shift, Marin found herself checking the window every few minutes. Banner's silhouette was always there, a dark shape against the mountain sky. But now she noticed things she hadn't before, how he sat ramrod straight, how his head turned in precise movements as he scanned the road. The county crews drove past twice, slow and deliberate. Their message was clear. Time was running out. Soon the pullout would be gone, along with whatever secret Banner had guarded all these years. Marin felt caught between fear and determination. Penwell's threat hung over her, but she couldn't shake the certainty that Banner's vigil meant something. She thought of him following her through the storm, each step measured and purposeful, like a soldier temporarily abandoning his post. The afternoon light began to fade, painting long shadows across the diner's worn linoleum. Banner's outline remained unchanged, faithful to his mysterious duty. Marin watched him through the window, torn between self-preservation and the nagging sense that she was witnessing something important, something that demanded to be protected, even at a cost. She couldn't know then how right she was, or how high that cost would climb. The afternoon lull settled over the Highway House diner like a warm blanket. Only the regulars remained, weathered faces hunched over, coffee cups, sharing stories worn smooth as river stones from years of retelling. Marin moved between them with the coffee pot, catching fragments of conversation that usually washed over her like background noise. Today was different. The name Wren Alder cut through the murmur, stopping her mid-pour. Awful thing, that crash, old Joe muttered, stirring his coffee endlessly. 8 years ago this winter. Pretty young thing with a little girl. Betty, who'd been serving at the Highway House longer than anyone, nodded. Right by that pullout where that dog sits. Never did sit right with me. How quick they closed the case. Marin's hand tightened on the coffee pot. What happened? The old-timers exchanged glances. Betty sighed, settling onto a stool. Bad storm that night. Young mother, Wren was her name, lost control near mile marker 42, but there were rumors. She lowered her voice. Some said it wasn't just the weather. Talk of another vehicle. Someone running her off the road. Hit and run? Marin's voice caught. Old Joe nodded grimly. That's what folks whispered. But nothing came of it. No charges filed. Story just disappeared. Like smoke, Betty agreed. But that dog, he showed up the very next morning, standing guard right where she went off the road. Marin set down the coffee pot with trembling hands. Banner. Yep, been there ever since. Old Joe's roomy eyes grew distant. Funny thing is, I remember Wren coming in here sometimes. Sweet girl. Always had her little daughter with her. Maybe 4 or 5 years old back then. The crash killed her? Marin asked softly. Betty shook her head. Wren didn't make it. The girl survived. Got adopted by family out of state, I heard. Such a shame. They were real close. Marin thought of Banner's unwavering vigil, his military precision. She'd been watching him more closely since Ronan's observation about his training. There was a pattern to his movements, sitting at attention for exactly 20 minutes, then pacing a triangle of ground before returning to his post. She grabbed her notepad and started logging times. 10:15 a.m. Banner sits facing east. 10:35. Pacing begins. 10:40 Ray. returns to sitting, now facing the guardrail. The routine repeated throughout the day, mechanical as clockwork. Some dogs just know, old Joe said, watching her scribble. My brother trained military dogs in Vietnam, said they could remember exact spots where things happened years later, like they were recording it all. A witness, Marin realized. Not a wanderer or a stray, but a silent sentinel guarding the last trace of Renalda's story. The bell chimed. Ronan entered, looking troubled. He waited until she brought his usual coffee before speaking low. Got into those old patrol logs. Night of January 12th, 8 years back. Heavy snow, black ice warnings. Single vehicle accident reported at 23:47 hours. But it wasn't single vehicle, was it? Marin asked. Surprise flickered across his face. How did you? The regulars remember, she said. They're talking about it now that the pullouts threatened. There were rumors of a hit and run. Ronan nodded slowly. Initial report noted paint transfer on the guardrail, 2 colors. But the follow-up investigation focused solely on road conditions. File was closed within 48 hours. That's fast. Too fast. He studied her. You've been watching the dog. Marin showed him her notepad. He moves like he's on patrol. Same times. Same pattern. Always that triangle of ground. Could be marking the crash site, Ronan mused, where the vehicles made contact. A sleek black car pulled into the lot. Silas Penwell emerged, talking rapidly on his phone. Need those hazards cleared before the survey team arrives. Yes, today. I don't care what paperwork you need. He strode inside, ending his call mid-sentence when he spotted Marin and Ronan. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Afternoon, trooper. More coffee shop detective work? Just enjoying the local color, Ronan replied mildly. Lots of interesting history around here. Ancient history, Penwell said dismissively. Progress doesn't wait for sentimentality or strays. Some might say justice shouldn't wait either, Marin found herself saying. Penwell's smile vanished. Careful, Miss Kittredge. Digging up old stories can be dangerous, especially when they're better left buried. He turned on his heel and left. Through the window, Marin watched him drive past the pullout, slowing to stare at Banner's unwavering form. He's getting impatient, she murmured. Yes, Ronan agreed. Question is, why? The afternoon wore on. Marin kept logging Banner's movements, each precise rotation adding weight to her certainty. This wasn't just about moving a dog or clearing a pullout. This was about erasing the last witness to whatever really happened that winter night. She watched Banner through the window, his grey muzzle lifted to the wind. 8 years of faithful vigil, guarding not just a patch of ground, but the truth buried beneath it. How many times had he stood sentinel while evidence weathered away? How long had he waited for someone to finally see what he was trying to show them? The county crews made another pass, their trucks moving slower this time, measuring. Soon they would return with their paperwork and their bulldozers. Soon the pullout would be gone, smooth pavement erasing all trace of Renalda's final moments. But not yet. Not while Banner still stood his ground. Not while someone was finally paying attention to his silent testimony. Betty appeared at her elbow, coffee pot in hand. You know, she said quietly, some folks thought that dog must have belonged to Ren or her little girl. Way he showed up right after, like he was looking for them. Or protecting them, Marin said softly, watching Banner's silhouette against the setting Sunday, making sure they weren't forgotten. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the pullout as Marin approached Banner, her steps slow and deliberate. Her brother Mark's voice echoed in her memory from the days she'd watch him work with his canine unit. It's all about respect and routine. These aren't pets, they're professionals. She stopped several feet from Banner, who watched her with alert eyes. Taking a deep breath, Marin raised her right hand in the precise way Mark had shown her years ago. Sits, she said clearly. Banner's response was immediate. He sat, spine straight, ears forward. Not the casual flop of a family pet, but the crisp movement of a trained officer. Good boy, Marin said softly, her throat tight. She moved forward slowly, maintaining eye contact. Platz. The German shepherd lowered himself to a perfect down position. Each motion was textbook precise, proving what Ronan had suspected. This was no ordinary stray. Marin watched as Banner resumed his routine. From his post by the mile marker, he moved with military precision to the drainage ditch, paused for exactly 30 seconds, then paced to the gnarled oak tree that marked the edge of the pullout. The triangle he walked was exact, unchanging. This wasn't random wandering. It was a patrol route. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ronan. Found something. Meet me at the diner. 20 minutes later, she slid into the booth across from him. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd been up most of the night. I kept digging through dispatch records, he said quietly, stirring his coffee. There's a gap. 23:30 to midnight, right when the crash happened. Radio logs, patrol car GPS tracks. Everything's missing for those 30 minutes. That's not normal? Not even close. We're required to maintain constant contact. The only way to have a gap like that is if someone deliberately cleared it. Marin leaned forward. And Silas Penwell. His dealership was hosting a late-night sale event that night. But security, footage from his lot, shows his personal car, leaving at 23:25 and returning at midnight. Right in that gap. So he could have been. Marin stopped as the diner's door chimed. A county worker entered, moving straight to the bulletin board. He posted a bright orange notice, nodded curtly to them, and left. Marin walked over to read it, her hands clenching. Notice of seizure, she read aloud. By order of County Safety Commission, any stray animal remaining on public property at mile marker 42 will be removed within 48 hours. They're not wasting time, Ronan muttered. If they take him, we'll lose whatever he's trying to show us. Marin returned to the booth, mind racing. My brother always said working dogs need to complete their missions. If we force Banner away, we could destroy evidence we don't even know about yet, Ronan finished. But that notice means we're running out of time. Thunder rumbled outside. Banner's silhouette remained steady at his post as the first heavy drops fell. Marin grabbed her jacket. Where are you going? Ronan asked. He'll let me shelter him during storms now. I'll bring him back at dawn. I won't break his vigil completely. But I can't leave him out there, in this. She drove to the pullout, parking with her hazards on. Banner watched her approach through the strengthening rain. Come on, boy, she called softly. Just until it passes. To her relief, he followed her to the car, shaking water from his coat before settling in the back seat. As she drove the short distance to her house, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Banner sat alertly, his eyes fixed on the pullout until it disappeared from view. In her small kitchen, she toweled him dry while he accepted the attention with dignified patience. No tail wagging or excited squirming, just the steady gaze of a professional temporarily paused in his duties. What are you guarding out there? She whispered. What did you see that night? Banner's only response was to move to her front window, positioning himself to stare in the direction of the pullout. Even here, he maintained his watch. The storm raged through the night. Marin dozed fitfully on her couch, waking often to find Banner still at his window post. As promised, she drove him back at first light. The moment she opened her car door, Banner jumped out and trotted to his precise spot by the mile marker. Within minutes, he began his triangle patrol. Mile marker, to ditch to Oak Tree and back. The routine that had held for 8 years, protecting whatever truth lay hidden in that geometric pattern. She called Ronan. We need to figure this out fast, she said without preamble. That seizure notice gives us 2 days at most. I'm working on getting a warrant to access Penwell's personal records from that night, he replied. But judges move slow, and he's got friends in high places. Banner doesn't have time for slow. Marin watched the dog complete another precise circuit. He's been trying to tell us something for 8 years. We have to listen before it's too late. The morning sun illuminated Banner's path, casting 3 distinct shadows as he moved between his points. Mile marker to ditch to Oak. Each stop perfectly timed, each angle exact. Not the meandering of a lost soul, but the dedicated protection of a trained guardian. Whatever happened that snowy night 8 years ago, Banner knew. He'd been standing sentinel ever since, waiting for someone to understand his silent testimony. Now time was running out, and Marin couldn't shake the feeling that if they lost Banner's vigil, they'd lose their last chance at truth. She thought of Renalda and her daughter, of lives cut short and justice delayed, of a loyal dog who refused to abandon his post, keeping faith long after others had moved on. "We'll figure it out," she promised Banner softly. "Whatever you're protecting, we'll make it count." He paused in his circuit to look at her, his aging face noble and determined. Then he resumed his patrol, guarding his geometric secret with unwavering dedication, while the county's deadline crept steadily closer. The morning sun had barely touched the horizon when Silas Penwell's gleaming black SUV pulled into the Highway House parking lot. Marin watched through the diner's front windows as he stepped out, straightening his expensive suit with practiced precision. The bell above the door chimed as he entered, his polished shoes clicking against the worn linoleum. "Miss Kittredge," he called out, loud enough for the sparse breakfast crowd to hear. "We need to discuss your interference with county business." Marin continued wiping down the counter, her movements steady despite her racing heart. "I'm working, Mr. Penwell. If you'd like coffee, I'm happy to serve you." He planted himself at the counter, his smile sharp as a knife. "Did you see the notice Animal Control posted? They're coming for that mutt tomorrow morning. Seems there was an incident with a child yesterday afternoon." Marin's hand stilled on the counter. "What incident?" "Oh. Hadn't you heard?" Penwell's voice dripped with false concern. "The dog lunged at a little girl, nearly bit her. At least, that's what her mother reported to the county. It was a lie. Marin had worked the afternoon shift yesterday, and Banner hadn't moved from his post except to complete his precise patrols. She'd watched him through the window as families stopped at the pullout, his behavior consistently calm and withdrawn. "Funny," she said quietly. "I served 3 families with children yesterday. Not one mentioned any trouble." "Well, memory can be selective." Penwell's smile never wavered. "Either way, that animal's time is up. I'd hate to see you face charges for harboring a dangerous dog." After he left, Marin pulled out her phone and started a new note. She began documenting every interaction she'd witnessed between Banner and the public, times, dates, and detailed descriptions of his peaceful behavior. That evening, she asked late-night truckers to verify their experiences. "That old boy," one regular said, shaking his head. "Never given anyone trouble. Just does his rounds, quiet as can be." She collected their statements, building a record against the lies. But the next morning brought worse news. Ronan's police cruiser pulled up, just as Marin arrived for her early shift. His face was grim as he led her to the pullout. "Found this about an hour ago," he said, pointing to a metal bowl near Banner's usual spot. The water inside had an oily sheen. "Lab will confirm, but I'm betting it's antifreeze." Sweet taste attracts animals. Marin's stomach churned. "He won't touch it. I've been bringing him fresh water and food since that first night." "Someone's getting desperate," Ronan observed, carefully collecting the bowl as evidence. "They want him gone before the demolition crews move in." "When?" Marin asked sharply. "County's floating dates. Could be next week. Could be next month. But they're moving fast." He straightened up, meeting her eyes. "This wasn't just harassment, Marin. This was attempted murder." Banner appeared from behind the oak tree, completing another circuit of his triangle. His movements were as precise as ever, undeterred by the morning's discovery. "The timing's not a coincidence," Marin said. "First the bite rumor, now this. Someone's afraid of what might be found here." Throughout her shift, Marin watched county vehicles drive past the pullout, their occupants making notes and taking measurements. Each time, Banner stood his ground, his aging frame somehow more dignified in the face of mounting pressure. During her break, she called the local animal shelter and spoke with a sympathetic volunteer. "I can document his behavior," the woman offered. "Prove he's not aggressive. Might buy you some time with animal control." Marin accepted, knowing every day mattered now. She couldn't shake the image of that poisoned water, the calculated cruelty of it. Someone wanted Banner silenced, not just removed, but eliminated. The next few days brought a parade of officials with clipboards and stern expressions. Demolition dates were proposed and revised, each one feeling like a countdown. Marin started taking her breaks in her car at the pullout, a quiet signal that Banner wasn't alone. One evening, as sunset painted the sky in fierce oranges, Ronan joined her there. Lab confirmed it was antifreeze, he said. But Penwell's got too many connections. The investigation will probably stall. Marin watched Banner complete another triangle patrol. They think if they get rid of him, whatever he's guarding will stay buried. Probably right, Ronan admitted, without him marking that specific pattern. He trailed off, studying the dog's movements. 8 years, same triangle. There has to be a reason. And we're running out of time to find it. Marin straightened her shoulders, decision crystallizing. I won't let them hurt him. If animal control comes, if the bulldozers roll in, I'll be here. Could cost you your job, Ronan warned. Maybe worse. Some things matter more than playing it safe. She thought of the poisoned water, the manufactured rumors, all the attempts to erase this faithful guardian and his secret vigil. Sometimes you have to stand your ground. Banner paused in his circuit, his graying muzzle lifted to the darkening sky. For a moment, his silhouette against the sunset looked almost mythic, a creature out of legend, keeping ancient promises that humans had forgotten how to honor. Marin checked her phone, reading through her documented timeline of Banner's peaceful interactions. Tomorrow would bring more pressure, more threats, more attempts to force him from his post. But she had chosen her side in this fight. Like Banner, she would hold her ground. Whatever truth lay hidden in that triangle of earth, it deserved its defender. And Marin had decided she would be that defender, no matter the cost. She watched Banner resume his patrol, each step measured and purposeful. The truth he guarded had waited 8 years. With her help, it would wait a little longer, long enough for justice to finally catch up. The September air hung heavy with pre-dawn moisture as Marin pulled into the empty pullout. Her headlights swept across Banner's familiar form, but something was different. Instead of his usual patrol, the German Shepherd stood rigid by the old oak tree that marked one point of his triangle. As Marin cut the engine, Banner's head lowered to the ground. His front paws worked with purposeful intensity, clawing at the earth near the tree's base. This wasn't his normal behavior. This was urgent, deliberate. "What is it, boy?" Marin whispered, stepping closer. Banner paused only long enough to ensure she was following before resuming his dig. The sound of his nails scraping against more than just soil caught her attention. There was something else there. Marin knelt beside him, her knees sinking into the damp earth. Using her hands, she began clearing away the loosened dirt. Banner's renewed vigor matched her own efforts, their shared purpose clear in the growing light. "Hold on," she murmured, feeling something solid beneath her fingers. "Let me help." She retrieved a small gardening trowel from her car, part of her emergency kit, and returned to work alongside Banner. The dog's intensity never wavered as they excavated together. The sky began to lighten, painting everything in grey tones when her trowel struck something with a metallic clang. Banner's ears pricked forward, and his digging became even more focused. Marin carefully scraped away more soil, revealing what looked like a piece of painted metal tangled in the oak's roots. It had been there so long that the tree had begun growing around it, incorporating the foreign object into its own structure. With trembling fingers, she pulled out her phone and dialed Ronan's number. He answered on the second ring, voice alert despite the early hour. "What's wrong? Can you come to the pullout? Now?" Banner found something. 20 minutes later, Ronan's cruiser pulled in beside her car. He approached with a flashlight, though dawn was breaking in earnest now. "Show me," he said simply. Marin led him to the partially excavated spot. "Banner started digging here. There's something metallic, caught in the roots." Ronan crouched down, directing his flashlight beam into the shallow hole. "Don't touch anything else. Let me document this properly first." He took out his phone and began photographing the scene from multiple angles, including Banner, who sat watching their every move with intense focus. The dog's usual stoic demeanor seemed charged with anticipation. "Okay," Ronan said finally. "Let's see what we've got." Together, they carefully worked the metal piece free from the root system that had grown around it. As it emerged, the object's identity became clear. A bumper fragment, roughly the size of Marin's forearm, with traces of dark blue paint still visible beneath years of corrosion. "This is consistent with a high-speed impact," Ronan observed, turning the piece over in his gloved hands. "The paint transfer, the way it's bent, this didn't break off from normal wear and tear." Marin looked at the oak tree with new understanding. 8 years of growth rings would have started forming around it right after Renalda's crash. Banner moved closer, nose touching the bumper fragment briefly before returning to his vigilant posture. His entire bearing seemed to say, "Finally, you understand." "This is physical evidence," Ronan said, carefully bagging the fragment. "The first real proof, linking this specific location to the crash. I'll log it properly and start the chain of custody documentation." Marin stood slowly, brushing dirt from her knees. The weight of what they'd found settled over her like a heavy blanket. The demolition crews would have destroyed this. The roots would have been ripped up, the evidence scattered. Or buried under new construction. Ronan agreed grimly. "This changes things. We can request a formal investigation now." Banner completed a circuit of his triangle, but his steps seemed lighter somehow. For 8 years, he had stood guard over this secret, waiting for someone to understand his message. "He knew," Marin said softly, watching the dog's precise movements. All this time, he knew exactly what he was protecting. The sun broke over the horizon, casting long shadows across the pullout. Marin could see the county's survey stakes marking where the new development would go, stakes that had nearly marked the burial of truth instead of its discovery. Ronan carefully stored the evidence bag in his cruiser. "I'll take this in personally, start the paperwork. We'll need to move carefully from here, do everything by the book." "What do you think we'll find?" Marin asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "Paint analysis might give us a vehicle match. The angle of impact could help reconstruct the crash." He paused, looking back at the oak tree. 8 years is a long time, but physical evidence doesn't forget. The ground remembers what happened here. Banner had resumed his position by the oak, as steady as ever. But now Marin saw his vigil differently, not just as a demonstration of loyalty, but as a testament to patience. He had waited through seasons and storms, through threats and attempts to remove him, guarding his evidence until someone finally thought to look where he was pointing. The morning light strengthened, bringing color back to the world. Marin knew she should head to the diner for her shift, but she lingered a moment longer, absorbing the significance of what they'd found. The bumper fragment was more than just metal and paint. It was validation of every instinct that had told her Banner's vigil mattered. She looked at the old dog, his graying muzzle held high despite his night of digging. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not giving up." Banner's eyes met hers with that same unwavering intensity. The next steps would require precision and care, but the truth had finally begun to surface. Like the oak tree's roots, it had been growing stronger in secret, waiting for its moment to break through. Back at the Highway House diner, Marin couldn't stop thinking about the bumper fragment as she wiped down the counter for the morning rush. The evidence they'd uncovered changed everything. Banner wasn't just a loyal dog who couldn't let go. He was a guardian protecting vital proof of what happened that winter night. She paused her cleaning, watching through the window as Banner maintained his precise patrol of the triangle. His movements held new meaning now. Each careful step traced the boundaries of a crime scene, the last place his family had been whole. The morning regulars filtered in, their conversations a familiar buzz around her. Marin's hand shook slightly as she reached for the community bulletin board behind the counter. Between notices for yard sales and lost cats, she found an empty space. Taking a clean index card from beneath the register, she wrote in clear, steady letters, "Renalda, family please contact." She added the diner's phone number, then pinned it carefully to the board. The message was simple, direct, meant to catch the eye of anyone still searching for answers about that night. Someone, somewhere, must be wondering about Ren. The bell above the door chimed, and Ronan entered, his expression serious but controlled. He took his usual seat at the counter, waiting until Marin could step away from other customers. "I sent the fragment for analysis," he said quietly, accepting the coffee she poured. "Kept it unofficial for now. If word gets out too soon, someone might try to interfere," Marin finished. They both knew who that Someone might be. As if summoned by their conversation, Silas Penwell's sleek car pulled into the lot. Through the window, Marin watched him step out, straightening his expensive suit with practiced precision. He paused to look at Banner, his face tight with barely concealed anger. The bell chimed again as Silas entered. His politician's smile didn't reach his eyes as he approached the counter, deliberately taking the seat next to Ronan. "Miss Kittredge," he said smoothly, "I hope you've reconsidered your position on the hazard removal situation. The county board is quite concerned about public safety." Marin met his gaze steadily. "Banner's never been a hazard. 8 years without a single incident proves that." "Ah, but perception is everything, isn't it?" Silas's smile widened fractionally. "Which is why I've taken the liberty of filing an official complaint about your interference with county operations. The board will be reviewing it this afternoon." Ronan set his coffee cup down with careful precision. "Interesting timing, Mr. Penwell. Some might say you're in an awful hurry to clear that pullout." "Progress waits for no one, Trooper Vale." Silas stood, straightening his tie. "And neither does public safety. Good day." They watched him leave, his car accelerating perhaps a bit too quickly as he pulled away. Through the window, Banner tracked the vehicle's movement with alert attention. "He's scared," Marin said softly. "He knows what that bumper fragment might mean." Ronan nodded. "The paint analysis should tell us what kind of vehicle it came from, if it matches anything in Penwell's inventory from 8 years ago. That's why he's pushing so hard to discredit me." Marin's hands clenched around her cleaning rag. "He wants everyone focused on the crazy diner waitresses, protecting a dangerous stray, instead of asking why that dog won't leave that spot." Throughout the day, Marin watched more county vehicles drive slowly past the pullout. Each time, Banner stood his ground, unfazed by their presence. His devotion had protected the truth for 8 years. He wouldn't falter now. During her break, Marin sat at the empty counter, staring at her simple notice on the bulletin board. Somewhere out there was a family who had lost Renalda. Maybe they'd given up searching, worn down by years of silence. But Banner hadn't given up, and neither would she. The truth had been there all along, written in Banner's unwavering vigil, buried in the oak's patient roots. Now it had physical form, a twisted piece of metal that could finally speak for those who couldn't. Marin thought of all the times she'd watched Banner through the diner windows, never imagining he was actually standing guard over evidence of a crime. Her resolve hardened like steel. Silas could file all the complaints he wanted. He could try to paint her as an obstacle to progress, as someone putting sentiment above safety. But the truth had taken root too deeply to be bulldozed away now. Banner's silhouette remained steady at his post, as the afternoon sun lengthened shadows across the pullout. He was more than just a loyal dog. He was a witness who had never left his post, a guardian who had protected vital evidence through every season, every storm, every attempt to remove him. The truth now had a body in that bumper fragment. It had a place in that triangle of ground Banner had defended so faithfully. All it needed was a voice, and Marin was ready to provide it, no matter what came next. The afternoon light was fading when Silas Penwell's secretary delivered the notice to the Highway House diner. Marin unfolded the official county document with trembling fingers, her heart sinking as she read the typed words. Due to public safety concerns and to minimize traffic disruption, demolition and hazard removal at mile marker 37 of State Route Y12 has been rescheduled for 5 ante-meridiem tomorrow. The paper crinkled in her grip. Dawn. They were coming at dawn. The diner's phone rang, making her jump. It was Ronan. "I just got word," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Penwell pulled strings with the county board. They're fast-tracking everything." "I know. They just delivered the notice." Marin walked to the window, watching Banner maintain his steadfast position. "He's trying to catch us off guard, hoping we won't have time to organize any resistance." "I've been making calls," Ronan said. "As a state trooper, I have authority to conduct safety inspections of any construction site on state routes. I can delay them, maybe buy us a few hours while I check every piece of equipment." Marin pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "Thank you, but a few hours won't be enough. We need more time for the paint analysis to come back. What are you planning? Ronan's tone sharpened with concern. Nothing illegal, she assured him. But I won't let them destroy that site without a fight. I have an old bike chain in my car. If I secure myself to the mile marker, they can't demolish anything without risking harm to a citizen. A long pause followed. Marin, that's dangerous. If Penwell's willing to poison a dog, there's no telling what he might do. I'll have my phone. I'll record everything. And you'll be there, conducting your inspection, right? Another pause. Yes, but we have to be smart about this. No rash moves. Everything by the book. Everything documented. We can't give them any excuse to discredit us. Agreed. Marin watched dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The weather report had predicted rain by morning. I need to prepare some things. My shift ends in an hour. After hanging up, she retrieved the seizure notice from the counter and read it again carefully, looking for any procedural mistakes they could use. The language was precise, the timing technically legal, even if morally questionable. Silas had covered his bases well. The evening rush kept her busy, but her mind worked through each detail of tomorrow's stand. She packed extra batteries for her phone, a waterproof jacket, energy bars. The bike chain was solid steel, strong enough to resist casual bolt cutters. They would have to call the fire department to remove her. More delays, more witnesses. As her shift wound down, the first drops of rain tapped against the windows. Banner remained at his post, his fur darkening with moisture. He had endured 8 years of storms. One more wouldn't move him. Mrs. Chen, one of her regular customers, touched her arm as she cleared the table. We've been talking, dear. Some of us old-timers will come tomorrow morning. To witness. To support. Tears pricked at Marin's eyes. Thank you. But it might get ugly. The elderly woman's face hardened. All the more reason to have witnesses. That dog's been keeping his vigil longer than some folks have lived here. He deserves better than to be brushed aside like yesterday's trash. After closing, Marin made one last check of her supplies. The chain was coiled in her bag, along with a small but sturdy padlock. Her phone was fully charged. She had written the number for local media on her arm in permanent marker just in case. The rain fell steadily now as she stepped outside. Banner's outline was barely visible through the gloom, but she knew he was there. His dedication had preserved evidence of a crime for 8 years. Now it was her turn to stand guard. She walked to the mile marker, rain soaking through her jacket. Banner watched her approach, his ears alert but relaxed. They had formed their own kind of trust these past weeks. Just a few more hours, she told him softly. We've got to hold them off just a little longer. The oak tree creaked in the strengthening wind, its roots still holding their secret where the bumper fragment had been found. Tomorrow those roots would face bulldozers and excavators. But first, they would have to get past a stubborn waitress and a state trooper who believed in justice more than expedience. Marin touched the cold metal of the mile marker. Come dawn, she would be chained to it, forcing them to acknowledge her presence, her protest. 8 years of silence were about to end, one way or another. Banner settled into his usual position, eyes fixed on the oak as if he could see through the darkness to the truth he had guarded for so long. The rain continued to fall, but neither dog nor woman moved from their posts. The time for hesitation was over. Dawn would find them ready. Thunder rolled in the distance as Marin walked back to her car. She would go home, try to rest for a few hours, then return well before the construction crews. Her hands were steady now, her purpose clear. Let Silas bring his bulldozers and his bureaucracy. Some things were worth standing up for, no matter the cost. She cast one last look at Banner's faithful silhouette. Tomorrow would test them both, but they wouldn't face it alone. Between Ronan's official inspection, the old-timer's witness, and her own peaceful resistance, they had a chance to stall the demolition long enough for justice to catch up. The rain drummed on her car roof as she started the engine. In just a few hours, she would return to make her stand. No more running, no more waiting. The truth had found its voice, and tomorrow it would refuse to be silenced. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when Marin's car pulled into the empty highway house parking lot. Her headlights swept across Banner's unwavering form at the mile marker, his fur silvered with morning dew. The air felt heavy with coming rain, and low clouds pressed down like a lid over the valley. With trembling fingers, she pulled the steel bike chain from her bag. Its weight felt reassuring, solid. She had chosen this to make her stand here, where Banner had kept his vigil for 8 years. The metal links clinked softly as she wrapped them around both the marker post and her waist. "I won't let them rush this. Through," she whispered to Banner, who had padded over to inspect her activity. His dark eyes watched intently as she secured the padlock with a decisive click. The first rumble of heavy machinery echoed from around the bend. Marin's heart picked up speed, but she forced her breathing to stay steady. Banner's ears pricked forward, but he held his ground within his guarded triangle. 2 massive yellow excavators appeared, followed by a line of dump trucks. Their headlights cut through the pre-dawn gloom like searching eyes. As they ground to a halt, Marin glimpsed familiar faces behind the windshields. Local contractors who had probably known Ren Alder, who might have even attended her funeral. A patrol car's lights flashed blue and red against the grey morning. Ronan stepped out, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. He approached the lead excavator, notebook in hand. "Morning, gentlemen," he called out, his voice carrying clear authority. "I need to conduct some safety checks before we proceed. We've had reports of unstable ground near the culvert." The crew foreman climbed down, clearly irritated. "We've got orders to clear this site. Time-sensitive project. And I've got concerns about worker safety," Ronan countered smoothly. He gestured to the ditch where water had carved deeper channels during recent storms. "Plus, there are some disputes about the posted seizure notices that need resolution." The foreman's jaw worked as he glanced between Ronan's impassive face and Marin's chained form. Other workers climbed down from their machines, gathering in small clusters, speaking in low voices. The delay was working. Each minute of inspection was another minute for justice to catch up. Banner paced his triangle with military precision, from marker to oak to ditch and back. His routine seemed to unnerve the workers, who gave him a wide berth. They had heard the rumors about biting, even though anyone who frequented the diner knew better. For a precious half-hour, Ronan methodically documented every potential safety concern. The machines stood idle, their engines ticking as they cooled. The workers shifted restlessly, checking phones, sharing cigarettes. Some cast sympathetic looks toward Marin and Banner. Hope began to bloom in Marin's chest. Maybe they had bought enough time. Maybe someone would finally ask the right questions about that winter night 8 years ago. Then a black luxury SUV swept around the bend, gravel crunching under its tires. Silas Penwell emerged, elegant despite the early hour, carrying a leather briefcase. His face was flushed with triumph. "Gentlemen," he announced, striding forward, "I have here a court order authorizing immediate clearance of this site." He pulled out an official-looking document. "It specifically overrides any temporary holds or inspection delays." Ronan took the paper, scanning it carefully. His expression remained neutral, but Marin saw his shoulders tighten. The order was real. Dark clouds began banking overhead, pushed by a strengthening wind that carried the smell of rain. The weather was turning, just like their fortune. "Start your engines," Silas commanded, shooting Marin a cold smile. "The lady can either remove herself, or she'll be removed." The excavators roared to life. Their operators looked uncomfortable, but guided their machines forward with slow determination. The sound sent birds scattering from nearby trees. "This is wrong," Marin called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You all know it's wrong. That crash site holds answers about what happened to Ren Alder." Some workers paused, but Silas's voice cut through any hesitation. "The only thing wrong here is a trespasser obstructing legal construction. Move those machines forward." Banner's hackles rose as the excavators crept closer. He planted himself firmly between the machines and his guarded triangle, a living barrier of fur and fierce devotion. The tension stretched like a live wire, humming with dangerous potential. Marin felt the chain's cold links press against her ribs as she breathed. She caught Ronan's eye, saw him calculating options, knew they were running out of legal moves. The excavator's treads churned the wet ground. Now just yards away, Banner didn't growl or bark. He simply stood his ground, as he had for 8 years, protecting the truth buried in this soil. Marin wrapped her hands around the chain and steeled herself. They would have to drag her away. Thunder rolled overhead as the machines bore down on the pullout. The moment of almost victory had shattered, leaving them exposed to Silas's ruthless efficiency. But Marin's determination burned brighter than ever. She wouldn't break faith with Banner's long vigil. Not now. Not when they were so close to uncovering the truth. Thunder cracked overhead with explosive force, momentarily drowning out the growl of the excavators. The sound echoed off the hills like artillery fire, making everyone at the pullout flinch. Dark clouds had transformed the dawn into an unnatural twilight. Marin felt the chain grow cold against her skin as the first heavy droplets fell. Banner pressed closer to her legs, his fur bristling not just at the machines now, but at the mounting fury of the storm. The excavators paused their advance as sheets of rain began to slash sideways across the site. A brilliant flash turned the world white. Lightning, drawn to the height of the old oak, struck with a deafening boom. The massive tree shuddered from crown to root. One of its major limbs, weakened by age and the impact from 8 years ago, split with a terrible groan. Workers scattered as the branch crashed down, sending splinters flying. The ground beneath the pullout shuddered. Years of erosion from storms like this had eaten away at the bank, and now the saturated soil was giving way. Marin heard Ronan shouting for everyone to clear the area, his voice barely carrying over the wind and rain. She fumbled, with the chain's lock, suddenly desperate to free herself from the mile marker. The metal was slick with rain, the key refusing to turn. Banner barked, a sharp, urgent sound she'd never heard from him before. The culvert below was transforming into a raging torrent as runoff from the hills converged. The water rose with frightening speed, brown and churning with debris. Marin felt the ground shift beneath her feet as the bank began to crumble. "Marin!" Ronan's shout carried real fear now. "The whole bank is going." She abandoned the lock and tried to run, but it was too late. With a sound like tearing fabric, the earth gave way. Marin felt herself falling, Banner still pressed against her side. They tumbled together into the swollen culvert, the icy water stealing her breath. The current grabbed them immediately, pulling them into its deadly dance. Marin kicked hard, trying to keep her head above water, but her foot caught on something beneath the surface. A root, a piece of debris, she couldn't tell. Pain shot through her ankle as she twisted, trapped in the torrent. Panic clawed at her chest as water splashed over her face. She could hear shouting from above, see dark figures moving against the sky, but they seemed impossibly far away. The current pulled at her body, threatening to drag her under completely. Then, she felt Banner's solid warmth against her side. The shepherd wasn't trying to swim to safety himself. Instead, he braced his body against hers, creating a buffer against the current. His weight and strength gave her just enough stability to reach up toward the eroded bank. "Grab my hand." Ronan had belly, crawled to the edge, stretching down toward her. Even through the rain, she could see the intensity in his eyes, the absolute focus. Marin stretched up, her shoulders screaming with the effort. Their fingers brushed once, twice, but couldn't quite connect. Banner shifted, pushing against her more firmly, literally giving her a boost with his body. This time, when she reached up, Ronan caught her wrist in an iron grip. "I've got you," he grunted, beginning to pull. "Hold on." The current fought to keep her, but Ronan's strength won out. He dragged her up onto somewhat solid ground, both of them gasping. Marin turned immediately, reaching back toward the water. "Banner!" she screamed. The dog had slipped back into the flow when she'd been pulled free. His dark head bobbed in the current as he struggled against its force. Through the curtain of rain, Marin spotted movement on the opposite bank. A figure appeared at the railing, small, female teenage. The girl's hand went to her neck and pulled something that glinted even in the dim stormlight. A pattern of whistles cut through the rain and wind, sharp and distinctive. Marin had never heard anything like it. But Banner's reaction was immediate. His ears pricked forward, and his struggling took on new purpose. Instead of being swept downstream, he began fighting his way upstream toward the sound. The girl whistled again, the pattern unchanged. Banner's powerful legs found purchase against the culvert bottom. Stroke by stroke, He pushed against the current, moving toward that familiar call. The locket in the girl's hand caught another flash of lightning, revealing its battered surface. Marin watched in awe as Banner made steady progress toward the opposite bank, the mysterious whistles guiding him home. The dog who had stood guard for 8 years was swimming with everything he had, drawn by a sound that seemed to reach past time itself. The excavator operators had abandoned their machines. Workers who moments ago had been ready to bulldoze the site now stood transfixed by the drama unfolding in the swollen culvert. Even Silas had gone silent, his court order forgotten in his hand. Through the drowning rain and the culvert's roar, Banner fought on, answering a call that had waited 8 years to be heard. Marin watched as Banner finally reached the bore, opposite bank, his powerful legs finding purchase on the muddy slope. The girl helped him up, wrapping her thin arms around his soaked fur as he shook himself. Both of them were trembling, the dog from exertion, the girl from something deeper. Ronan helped Marin to her feet, and they made their way carefully around the culvert's edge to reach them. Up close, Marin could see the girl properly. 16 or so, with long dark hair plastered to her face by the rain. Her eyes held an old sadness that seemed to reach far beyond her years. "I'm June," the girl said, her voice barely audible above the storm's diminishing roar. Her fingers clutched the weathered locket. "June Alder. I saw your notice at the diner about my mom, about Ren." Marin's heart skipped a beat. Banner pressed against June's leg, his tail wagging slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. 8 years of waiting. And here was what he'd been guarding for all along. "I was adopted out of state after the crash," June continued, shivering. "But I couldn't." She swallowed hard. The nightmares never stopped. Ronan shrugged off his jacket and draped it over June's shoulders. "Let's get you somewhere dry," he said gently. "The diner's just up the road." But June shook her head, her words coming faster now, as if she couldn't hold them back anymore. "I keep seeing it in my dreams. Over and over. We were driving home late. Mom was tired but happy. We'd been Christmas shopping." Her hand tightened on the locket. There were headlights behind us, getting closer. Then this huge chrome grille in our mirror right on our bumper. I remember thinking something was wrong with it, like it was missing a piece, an emblem or something. Marin exchanged a quick look with Ronan. His hand went to his phone, just as it buzzed with an incoming message. "The lab report," he said quietly, scanning the screen. His expression hardened. "The paint samples from the bumper shard. They've got a match. It's from a limited edition run of luxury vehicles. Custom paint job, only available through one dealership in the whole state." He looked up, his eyes finding Silas, who was still pacing near the idle excavator, Penwell Auto. The pieces were falling into place with devastating clarity. The vigil Banner had kept for 8 years. The shard they'd found embedded in the oak. June's haunting memory of that chrome grille. And now the paint, traced directly back to Silas's dealership. Thunder rumbled again, but more distant now as the storm began to move off. Silas stalked over, waving his court order like a shield. "This changes nothing," he snapped. "The demolition is legally approved. That dog is still marked for seizure, and some teenager's bad dreams aren't evidence of anything." "Actually," Ronan said, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority, "this changes everything. We now have physical evidence linking vehicles from your dealership to an unsolved crash. We have an eyewitness." He nodded toward June. "And we have a canine-trained police dog who's been marking this scene for 8 years." "You can't prove," Silas began, but Ronan cut him off. "The paint is proof. The impact site is proof. And I'm willing to bet if we look hard enough at your service records from that December, we'll find a luxury vehicle brought in for front-end repairs. Missing its factory emblem, perhaps?" Silas's face had gone pale beneath his expensive tan. He opened his mouth, closed it, then spun on his heel and strode toward his car. "This site is now an active crime scene," Ronan called after him. "Any attempt to alter or destroy evidence will result in immediate charges." The demolition crew began powering down their machines. The rain had settled into a gentle drizzle, and the first hints of dawn were appearing in the east. Banner sat at attention between June and Marin, his posture straight and proud, as if he knew his long watch was finally serving its purpose. June knelt beside him, her fingers finding the spot behind his ears that he loved. "Mom used to say that love leaves marks on the world," she said softly, "like rings in a tree. You can't erase them, no matter how hard you try." She looked up at Marin, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "Thank you for not letting them erase this." Marin touched the girl's shoulder, feeling the weight of 8 years of vigilance, of loyalty, of truth refusing to stay buried. "Banner's the one you should thank," she said. "He never gave up. He kept your story safe until you could come back to tell it." The storm's tail was moving off to the east, taking its fury with it. But its passing had exposed something that no amount of paperwork or bulldozers could now cover up. The truth had finally broken through, carried on the back of a dog's unwavering loyalty and a daughter's haunted dreams. In the growing light, Banner's triangle, the mile marker, the ditch, the oak, stood as clear as a declaration. This was no longer just a pullout on State Route Y12. It was hallowed ground, marked by love and guarded by faith, waiting all this time for justice to find its way home. Ronan was already on his phone, calling in a forensics team. June leaned against Marin, exhausted but somehow lighter, as if sharing her burden had eased its weight. And Banner, after 8 years of watching and waiting, finally allowed himself to close his eyes and rest, his head on June's knee, his vigil transformed from solitary guard to living proof. The morning light struggled through breaking clouds as Marin, Ronan, and June huddled near Ronan's patrol car. The rain had softened to a misty drizzle, making the air feel heavy with anticipation. Banner sat alert at the mile marker, his fur still damp from the earlier downpour, maintaining his watch, even as they prepared for what would come next. Ronan spread a weatherproof notepad on the hood of his car, his handwriting precise as he listed their evidence. "Let's get everything in order," he said, his voice steady and methodical. "First, we have the dispatch records, showing a suspicious gap the night of the crash, right when calls should have been heaviest due to the storm." June leaned forward, her fingers absently touching the locket at her neck. "That was December 12th, she said softly. "I remember because it was exactly 13 days before Christmas. Mom and I had been shopping for decorations." Marin watched as Ronan noted the date, adding it to their timeline. "Then we have the physical evidence," she added. "The triangle Banner's been guarding all these years. It wasn't random. He was marking the exact points of impact." "Right." Ronan drew a rough diagram. "Mile marker here, the ditch line here, and the oak as the third point. Banner's been essentially preserving a crime scene perimeter this whole time." He glanced at the German Shepherd with newfound respect. "That's trained behavior, not coincidence." June wrapped her arms around herself, fighting a shiver that had nothing to do with the damp morning. "And the bumper shard we found in the oak? That proves there was a second vehicle, doesn't it? Mom's car was found intact, just crushed on the passenger side." Ronan nodded grimly. "The paint analysis is conclusive. It matches a specialty finish that was only available through Penwell Auto that year. Limited edition. Custom mixed. The lab found microscopic fragments of chrome plating too, consistent with where a manufacturer's emblem would have been mounted." "The emblem," June whispered, her face going pale. "That's what I see in my dreams. Headlights coming fast, and that chrome emblem catching the light just before." She swallowed hard, unable to finish. Marin put a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder, steadying her. "Your memory matches the physical evidence perfectly, June. That's not coincidence either." Ronan checked his body camera, making sure the indicator light showed it was functioning. "I'm recording all of this," he said, "and I'll keep recording when Silas comes back, which he will, once he realizes he can't just run from this anymore." "He'll try to talk over everyone," Marin said, her jaw set with determination. "He'll waive that court order and try to make this about development permits and public safety hazards. Let him try." Ronan's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "The moment he shows up, this becomes an official interview regarding an open investigation. June, you don't have to say anything if you're not ready." But June squared her shoulders, looking older than her 16 years. "I'm ready. I've been ready for 8 years, I just didn't know it. Banner knew though, didn't he?" She looked at the dog with wonder. He knew somebody had to keep the truth safe until I could come back. Marin moved to stand near Banner, her presence a quiet support for his unwavering vigil. The oak tree loomed behind them, its splintered limb and exposed wound from the lightning strike impossible to miss in the growing daylight. The hidden shard they'd recovered had left its mark in the tree's rings, like truth growing deeper year by year, waiting to be found. When Silas arrives, Ronan continued, checking his gear one last time. We stay calm and controlled. We let the evidence speak. Marin, if he tries to bulldoze the conversation, I'll speak up, she said firmly. I'm done being quiet. 8 years is long enough. They could hear distant traffic beginning to pick up on State Route Y12 as the morning commute started. The demolition crews hung back by their idle machines, uncertain now that the site had been declared an active investigation scene. The rain had nearly stopped, leaving everything with a glossy sheen that made the world look newly washed. Banner's ears pricked suddenly, and he turned his head toward the highway. In the distance, they could hear the distinctive rumble of an expensive car approaching. Here we go, Ronan said quietly, adjusting his body camera one final time. Remember, controlled and documented. Everything by the book. June touched her locket once more, then straightened her spine. Marin moved to stand shoulder to shoulder with her, while Banner held his post at the mile marker. The ruined oak stretched above them, its damaged limb pointing like an accusation toward the approaching sound. They were ready. After 8 years of silence, of waiting, of faithful vigil, they were finally ready to speak truth to power. The evidence was clear, the witnesses gathered, and even the morning itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for justice to arrive. The sound of tires on wet pavement grew louder, and a sleek black car appeared around the bend. Silas Penwell was coming back to face what he had tried so hard to bury. But this time he would find no easy path to escape. This time the truth had too many guardians. The sleek black car pulled to a stop at the pullout, its tires crunching on wet gravel. Silas Penwell emerged, his expensive suit already collecting moisture from the misty air. His usual smooth confidence wavered when he saw the gathered group waiting for him. Ronan stepped forward, body camera clearly visible on his uniform. Mr. Penwell, I need to inform you that you're being recorded as part of an ongoing investigation. Investigation? Silas scoffed, but his eyes darted between June and the evidence bag in Marin's hands. This is a simple matter of county development. I have the court order right here. Let me walk you through what we've found. Ronan cut in, his voice steady and official. We have an embedded bumper fragment with paint matching a limited edition finish exclusive to your dealership. We have dispatch records showing an unexplained gap the night of the crash. We have a witness, he gestured to June, who remembers specific details about a vehicle that struck her mother's car. Banner moved with deliberate purpose, circling Silas's parked vehicle. His nose worked the air, and then he sat, staring intently at the businessman. It was the same alert posture he'd shown during Marin's canine training tests. That dog is a menace, Silas snapped, but sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning. This is harassment. I'll have your badge for this, Vale. The paint analysis is conclusive, Ronan continued, unruffled. The chrome fragments match the type used in dealer emblems from that year. And now we have Banner demonstrating trained alert behavior around your vehicle. Something dark flickered in Silas's eyes. He lunged toward Marin, reaching for the evidence bag. Give me that. But Banner was faster. The German shepherd inserted himself between them, lips pulled back to reveal gleaming teeth. His growl was low and controlled, a clear warning, not wild aggression. Silas stumbled backward, color draining from his face. 8 years, Marin said quietly, holding her ground. Banner kept this vigil for 8 years while you tried to bury what happened. You don't understand, Silas snarled, but his voice cracked. Do you know what a hit-and-run conviction would have done to my reputation? To my business? I'd built everything from nothing. I couldn't let one stupid mistake destroy it all. A mistake? June's voice trembled with anger. My mother died. I lost my whole family that night. Ronan's voice cut through the tension. Mr. Penwell, you're confessing to leaving the scene of a fatal accident, tampering with evidence, and attempting to obstruct justice. Do you understand these rights as I'm about to read them to you? The fight seemed to drain from Silas all at once. His shoulders slumped as Ronan began reciting the Miranda warning. The demolition crews, watching from their machines, began powering down their equipment. The sound of dying engines filled the morning air. Banner padded back to June's side, his breathing heavy but his eyes never leaving Silas. The dog's mission, protecting both the truth of that night and the family he'd lost, was finally complete. He pressed against June's leg, and she buried her fingers in his fur, holding on like she'd never let go again. The morning sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the scarred oak tree, the mile marker, and the faithful guardian who had waited so long for justice to arrive. The paperwork moved quickly after Silas's confession. Black ink filled white spaces, transforming truth into record. In the county clerk's office, documents accumulated: formal charges, site protection orders, and statements bound in manila folders. Marin watched as the clerk stamped the final designation order. The pullout and its triangle of sacred ground would remain untouched, protected as both a memorial and a testament to unwavering loyalty. No speeches marked the moment, just the quiet thud of rubber on paper and initials in triplicate. Outside the office, June caught up with Marin in the hallway. Her eyes were red but clear, the locket now hanging proudly around her neck instead of being clutched like a secret. "I never thought I'd know what really happened," she said softly. "Mom would have been so grateful for what you did." "Banner did the hard part," Marin replied, but June shook her head. "You saw him when everyone else looked away. You stood up when it mattered." She hugged Marin quickly, then stepped back. "Thank you for helping bring my family's story into the light." Ronan approached, his uniform crisp despite the long hours of processing evidence and paperwork. "The DA's office is confident about the case," he said. Then, more personally, "You showed real courage through all this, Marin." She felt herself flush slightly at his praise. "Just did what needed doing." "Listen," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "When things settle down, when it isn't all storms and crisis, maybe we could get coffee? Talk about something besides evidence for a change?" Warmth bloomed in Marin's chest. "I'd like that," she said simply. They walked together to the parking lot, where Banner waited by June's car. The German shepherd's posture had changed subtly but profoundly. The weight of his 8-year vigil had lifted from his shoulders, replaced by an alertness that looked forward instead of standing guard over the past. For the first time since that tragic night, Banner stepped away from his post without hesitation or backward glance. He padded to June's side and curled contentedly at her feet, his graying muzzle resting on her shoes. The circle of loyalty had closed at last, guardian and family reunited. That evening, Marin moved through her closing routine at the Highway House diner. The familiar tasks felt different somehow, infused with a quiet strength she hadn't known she possessed. She was no longer the invisible server who blended into the background, but a woman who had stood her ground when it mattered most. Through the window, she could see the mile marker silvered by moonlight. The spot where Banner had maintained his vigil was empty now, but it didn't feel abandoned. It felt complete. Marin turned the key in the lock, the click echoing in the empty parking lot. In the distance, she imagined Banner curled up in June's home, his faithful heart finally at peace. Some loyalties, she had learned, were strong enough to outlast grief, patient enough to wait for justice, and pure enough to heal what was broken. She smiled as she walked to her car, no longer small in her own life, knowing that sometimes the quietest acts of courage could reshape the world in profound and lasting ways. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.